Do you ever wish that you could be more resilient to change, that you had the ability to bounce back regardless of whatever crisis? Do you feel that now as a midlife woman that you need resilience more than ever? Hormonal changes through menopause, sick aging parents, empty nest syndrome, looking to retirement with no income. Whatever the challenge is for you, I have some tips for you that will help you to not panic, but to bounce back and be far more resilient in life. Hi, I'm Dr. Tracey Swift and welcome to Women Over 50 Reclaim Your Mojo, a lifestyle channel devoted to bringing you the happiness advantage based on the science of happiness and positive psychology. If you're new here, then click subscribe, click the bell, and you'll be alerted every time there's a new video, and they will all relate to you. If you're a regular, welcome back. One great thing to know is that none of us are born resilient. Yes, that's true. Some people may be more tough-minded than others, but that is a feature of their personality. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are more resilient. I'm sure that you've all seen women who perhaps have had an adverse event. It could be through childhood or throughout their life, and then they become quite hard and quite brittle. They may have that mental toughness to persevere and get through, but it doesn't actually serve them in terms of being happy and living a life of grace and ease. Just how do you learn to be resilient and to bounce back in the face of crisis and challenge? Well, the number one thing that you can do is to take a backward step, to almost step outside yourself and look at the problem or the challenge or the crisis as if you were a visitor or somebody looking from externally. If you were to look back on crises throughout your life and how you dealt with them, would you say that perhaps you have a particular pattern, a particular way of dealing with things? Now, if you're a person perhaps who constantly seems to find themselves in a toxic relationship or in a toxic work environment, do you find that you're actually dealing with those problems in a particular way and you've always dealt with them that way? So that once they reoccur, you respond out of habit. Sometimes that will not serve you, and there is a concept in the psychology discipline called Maslow's hammer, and what it's about is if you always attack a problem in the same way, it's like the proverbial nail that you always hit with the same problem-solving hammer. Whereas if you are a person who looks for solutions, which is all about mindset, then you will be far more resilient. So problem solving is often talked about in workplaces as being a desirable quality. Are you a good problem solver? But in life, you need to be a solution seeker, because it's about a different type of mindset. Is what is the best way to deal with this situation? And because you're here watching this video on YouTube, it's likely that you use YouTube or Google as a search engine. And whatever situation you face in life, there is always, almost without exception, going to be somebody who's had exactly the same problem as you, and they've dealt with it in a particular way, and they've actually published about how they did that. So there are lots of ways to learn to learn what we do as individuals by looking at our lives in retrospect and how we've dealt with things, but then we can actually unlearn those processes that we typically use. So we don't always have to use the Maslow's hammer. And by drawing on the examples of other people and different types of ways to approach the problem that it is for us or whatever challenge it is, then we can relearn how to look at situations. So the number one tip to be resilient is be a solution seeker rather than a problem solver. The second fundamental way in which you can learn to be resilient is to look at where you are on a continuum called the 3 Ps. Now, the 3 Ps were developed by a Professor Martin Seligman, who is often referred to as the father of positive psychology. Now, he talks about these 3 Ps. The first one is personalisation. So if there is a challenge, and it's a global challenge, is it just affecting you personally? We've all met people who are just complete victims, and they talk about themselves always in this state of crisis, and it is all about them, when actually that's not true. It might be a wider problem. For example, we've all gone through the COVID-19 situation. That's affected some people more than others. Not all people are directly affected, but if it's a situation that affects more than one individual or more than one group or even a family, it's not all about the one person and ourselves in particular. And sometimes you find that if there's been a death in the family, I'm sure that you've seen a situation like that, where one person becomes the prima donna and it's all about them and they're the only person that's affected, which is completely untrue. So where do you sit on that personalisation? Are you a person that where a challenge or crisis comes up for you, it's all about you? You don't see the bigger picture that actually this is affecting other people as well. The second P is about pervasiveness. So to use an example, we all know people, and perhaps we've been there ourselves, where someone in our family very close to us dies, and it's a case of it's okay to feel sad, but at some point you would want to actually start to live life again. And so some people, depending on where they are in that pervasiveness continuum, will actually never allow themselves ever again to feel happy in any situation. They can't take joy in anything. They can't smile when something could normally bring them joy, because that state that they've got themselves into when they're facing that challenge, they can't see past it. It pervades every single aspect of their life, whether it be their home life, their work life, their hobbies, their joy, their friends, their social circle. They cannot get out of it. They cannot see beyond the crisis. Even though if they were allowed to allow themselves to feel joy in certain circumstances, then they would get more support and actually be more resourceful, and in turn they would be more resilient. So where do you sit on the pervasiveness continuum? Are you able to get things in perspective and see that actually whatever crisis it is that's facing you is not pervading every area of your life? Or do you allow things to overwhelm you? The third P is about permanence. So some situations happen, crises occur, and it is true that perhaps life will never be the same. If it's the death of a loved one, or if one of your family has gone through cancer and died, yes, life will never be the same. That's true. But some other circumstances might occur to us where perhaps you're in a situation where you've been made redundant and you feel so overwhelmed, your life can never be the same. Maybe your business has gone downhill. Maybe you've been declared bankrupt. Whatever that situation is for you, yes, in that very moment, it may seem that your life has come to an end. But actually, that is not true. And if you know, as I do, people who've committed suicide, and yet from the outside, you can look at their lives and think, what a waste. Because you can see that actually if they'd moved through it, then they would have had joy. And from the outside, it's easy enough to look in and say, well, they had so many other things that were going for them. But for the person, because they can't see past it, this is permanent, it's about part of their identity, they can't give it up, then it means that they can check out on life. And that does not enable them to be resilient. Or you may have seen people, and you may have seen people who've committed themselves to a particular lifestyle because they are a victim. They can never get out of it. Like, they keep telling themselves such a negative story that they basically, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So they can never get another job, for example. They can never set up another business because this terrible thing happened to them and it completely destroyed their life. So those are the 3 Ps, and it's really about getting a sense of perspective. This is a very deep subject, which is why next week we'll look at another 2 aspects, which are about strengthening your attitude and about selecting your emotion. But for now, you've had 2 tips there. One is to be able to take a look back and to see how you approach problems, challenges, and not always to look at them in the same way. And the other is to think about a sense of perspective in terms of permanence, pervasiveness, and personalisation. I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then please click like. If you would like to join my Women with Mojo membership club, I'll put the link down below, and I look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday for yet another video on resilience that will not only enable you to survive but to thrive in every aspect of your life.